It was 10 a.m. on March 13th, 2011, as a mother and son checked out of the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin. At the time, one watching this footage would likely think nothing of it. There's nothing that stands out, no indication that this would be the last time Timothy Pitson would ever be seen.
6-year-old Timothy Pitson of Illinois disappeared Friday. He was last seen leaving a Wisconsin Dells water park with his mother.
It's a devastating case with many layers of darkness, and it's one that I've already covered on the channel. But it was this moment, the seemingly mundane clip of the two standing together at the hotel checkout line and then calmly exiting the building, that's left a haunting impression in my mind. Today we'll be focusing in on the videos and photographs captured before the unthinkable happens. These are the moments before a disappearance. Before we start, this video is sponsored by Audible, the leading provider for audiobooks and spoken entertainment. Audible has thousands and thousands of different audiobooks to choose from the classics all the way to the newer works. Currently, Audible is running a promotion that gives you your first month of the service totally free of charge, which gives you access to one free audiobook of your choosing. Just visit audibletrial.com/Nick Crowley to sign up for your free trial. And by using that link, you are also greatly supporting me, which is very much appreciated, especially considering this video is definitely getting demonetized. It's been said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes 1,000 words just aren't enough. And for our first case, this is especially true. It was early December of 2019 when 56-year-old Andrian Meneveau was preparing for a trip with his mother, 83-year-old Felicity Loveday. Summer had just begun in Melbourne, and so, like many choose to do in the warmer months, the two decided to spend some time on the water. Andrian had owned a small fishing boat and had planned to stay on it for 3 days with his mother. Andrian had cared for Felicity for the whole 7 years prior, and getting her out of the house was likely something that could benefit her. And so the two boarded their boat in the town of Frankston and prepared to set sail on this new adventure. As Andrian prepped the boat, his sister Christina was there to see the two off. She did have some concerns about the trip, as she worried for her mother, but her mind was eased when Andrian promised her that he would keep in touch and send updates as the trip went on. To commemorate their weekend getaway, Christina snapped a picture of the two as they settled into the boat, seemingly prepared for their time at sea. This was the moment right before they disembarked on their trip. This was the moment before their disappearance. Christina would receive a text from Andrian 2 days later saying that the two were having a good time that didn't last long.
We have new details tonight on the mystery disappearance of an elderly woman and her son, last seen on a small boat near Frankston.
The next day, their boat was found 24 miles away from where they had launched, submerged underneath the water. Andrian and his mother were nowhere to be found, and only one of the life vests on board remained. Extensive searches of the area were carried out, but still there remained no trace of the two. The mother and son pair had vanished. Now at a glance, this case seems straightforward. Some type of accident, potentially caused by the unpredictable conditions of the sea, caused the ship to capsize, throwing the two out to sea, where they likely would have stood little chance. It's a fairly simple yet heartbreaking conclusion to come to, and it's one that makes this moment, the photo captured by the sister they left behind, all the more heartbreaking. But the thing about disappearances is that they are rarely, if ever, simple. There is always more than what meets the eye, and as it turns out, In this case, its strangest information had yet to be revealed. As it turns out, this trip to sea wasn't actually a vacation for the two. Andrian was taking Felicity out on the boat in order to cleanse her from, quote, evil spirits, spirits that had supposedly attached themselves to her when the two were meditating. It's been revealed that Felicity and Andrian were both what is known as co-Freemasons, a sort of spin-off group from the original Freemasons, and the two were more than just involved. In fact, the elderly Felicity was at one point a worshipful master, which is the most powerful elected official in the Masonic Lodge. So it seems that the two were meditating as part of this belief system, and that's when something supposedly went wrong. According to investigators, the mother and son had been practicing meditation for some time and believed that Felicity had woken black magic, and Andrian felt responsible for it. The boat trip was a means of reversing it. They needed to be on salt water to get rid of the black magic. So this journey to sea was no vacation. It was a ritual. This context makes what was initially viewed as a straightforward disappearance one that is now shrouded in mystery, and it only gets stranger the more you dig. It's now come forward that the boat only had half a tank of fuel when the two had departed, an amount that surely wouldn't have been enough for a 3-day trip. It was also found that on board the boat there were no sleeping quarters, with it being determined by investigators to not have been suitable for sleeping or living on for a 3-day trip. And not to mention, Felicity was very frail. 3 days at sea on a small boat doesn't sound like a great idea to begin with. Hours in the beating sun, and then the harsh cold of the nights. These are conditions that could really take its toll on an elderly person. But then you throw in the fact that there was nowhere to sleep. It just doesn't make sense. And to most, it seemed that this was a trip that was set up to fail. And because Mark was the one who planned the entire thing out, some believe that he never intended on having his mother survive the trip, and that it was all part of the ritual. Maybe Andrian believed that his mother was too far gone and completely consumed by these spirits, to the point where it couldn't be reversed, and out of fear for his and his family's lives, he killed Felicity and dumped her body into the ocean. But if this was the case, then where did he go? Again, this is a question yet to be fully answered. But upon investigation, something strange was revealed. Just weeks before their trip, Andrian had bought a second boat, a boat that is currently missing to this day. It's possible that Andrian used the second boat to escape and staged the scene by purposefully capsizing to make it look like the two had been lost at sea, potentially with Felicity on it. Or maybe the two simply escaped in the second boat together and wanted to make it look like they had gone missing in a freak accident. It's a strange case with such a concerning backstory that many feel something sinister must have happened out there. From the trip that was supposedly planned to fail, to the evil spirits that Andrian believed to be inside of his mother, to the second boat that had been bought right before the trip and is now missing. But this case has one more secret, a secret within the final picture taken before their disappearance. In the last few weeks, it has been revealed that investigators have been exploring the possibility that in this photo, Felicity Loveday was actually already dead. In the photo, Felicity appears to have her eyes shut and is looking extremely pale. Investigators also have noticed that her hands appear to be clenched, which could be a sign of rigor mortis, or the stiffening of the body. Many have chimed in online, including morticians and hospice care workers, who agreed that her body does appear consistent to what they've seen with their own patients. If Felicity truly was dead at the time of this photograph, then that means Andrian must have carried her onto the boat and sat her there. Which means that rather than killing Felicity, Andrian may have been planning on dumping her body as part of this ritual, as she may have already been gone. But there is one more side to this all, the sister who snapped that final picture. In the days following these reports, Christina has come forward and adamantly denied the claims. According to Christina, Felicity had actually been suffering from dementia, and she would frequently fall asleep as she was used to spending the majority of her time napping. So she believed that it was likely her mother had just dozed off. Plus, Felicity spent the majority of her time indoors, so she was naturally already extremely pale. So for now, whether Felicity Loveday was alive or not in her final picture is still a mystery, as well as what truly happened on that fateful boat ride. Hopefully someday, the truth of this case will be revealed. But for now we're left with a chilling picture. A photograph that only leaves us with more questions. A photograph that, for now, remains the last moment this mother and son were seen on camera. As evident from our first case, there are many ways to go missing at sea, some of which more shocking than others. I mean, after all, our oceans are unpredictable and powerful places. But most wouldn't expect to go missing on board a cruise ship. It was the night of March 23rd, 1998, on board Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Sea, a top-of-the-line cruise ship at the time. On board, 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley was headed to visit the ship's dance club. Once there, she met up with members of the ship's band, Blue Orchid, after their performance, and had begun drinking with them. It was something that had struck Amy as odd throughout the first few days of the trip. The crew had acted so kindly to her. They were so attentive, almost to the point where it was beginning to get creepy. This is something that she even had mentioned in passing to her family in the days prior, as she was starting to feel uncomfortable. But that night, she seemed to be easing up and letting loose. Upon arriving at the club, Amy enjoyed a long night of dancing and drinking with the band members, and specifically with a man named Alistair Douglas, or as most called him, Yellow. That night, the two were seen having a good time together, spending the majority of the dance party by each other's side. These were moments that were briefly captured on camera by an employee filming a promotional shoot for the ship. The person behind the camera likely had no idea how valuable what they were filming would someday be, because what they were filming would turn out to be some of Amy's last moments ever caught on camera. Amy would leave the dance club that morning at around 1 a.m. and head to her room, where she spent the night sleeping on the balcony. At roughly 5:30 that morning, her father would wake up to see her fast asleep on her chair, overlooking the water. Half an hour later, he'd awake to find her gone. She left her ID, wallet, and even her shoes, having only taken her cigarettes and a lighter. The family reported her missing just hours later and had begged the captain not to allow anyone to get off at Curacao, which happened to be the ship's next stop. This was because they feared that Amy had been kidnapped and viewed the stop as an opportunity for the kidnapper to escape with their daughter. Their plea was ignored, and passengers freely left the boat upon its arrival, a decision that likely proved costly. At a glance, it seems probable that Amy had simply fallen over the railing or even jumped. However, this was a theory that officials quickly ruled out, as she was an incredibly strong swimmer and even a lifeguard at the time. Also, not to mention the fact that she was deathly afraid of the ocean, and she would never go close to the edge, making it unlikely that she had accidentally fallen over. And if she did commit suicide, why would she do it in a way that ended with one of her greatest fears, the ocean? With that, and the fact that there was no evidence to suggest that she had fallen over, investigators decided that it wasn't plausible. Instead, they believed that Amy may have been kidnapped and smuggled off of the ship in Curacao. It's a theory that's even backed by multiple reports of someone matching Amy's description being spotted on the island. One report claimed that she was seen inside a brothel, where the witness claims that the woman told him she was in fact Amy and that she had begged him for help. Another person claimed to have seen her in a public bathroom where 3 men were harassing her. When the men left, this lady again claimed to be Amy and asked the witness for help. However, the men quickly came back into the restroom and hurried her out. Both of these instances were reported, along with countless other sightings in the area, but to this day nothing has come of it. But if these claims are to be believed, they would point to the idea that Amy wasn't just kidnapped, but that she may have also been trafficked. As dark as this theory is, it only gets darker as some claim that the crew members aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas were actually involved.
Don't just cruise the Caribbean, cruise the Royal Caribbean.
From the family's account, we already know that the crew seemed to be giving Amy special attention, something that she had even reported feeling uncomfortable with. Also, remember Yellow, the man who Amy was dancing with and was also a member of the crew? Well, 2 witnesses came forward and said that they had seen him with Amy at around 5:45 a.m. the morning of her disappearance, just 15 minutes after Amy was last seen on her balcony, the exact time frame where she would have disappeared. Also, Yellow had actually apologized to Amy's brother for her disappearance, saying, "I'm sorry about what happened to your sister." The issue was that at the time he said this, only the captain and security had been told that she was missing. It's also worth noting that when Amy was reported missing, the ship's officials refused to not let people off the boat, and instead they claimed that they would search the entirety of the boat, a search that eventually yielded no findings. Well, it would be revealed shortly after that this wasn't actually true, and rather than the extensive search that they had claimed to have done, they only ended up scanning the most popular areas of the ship without doing any real searching. The FBI even noted this and did their own comprehensive search days later, but at that point, it was likely too late. And there is one more detail, one that truly stands out. On cruise ships, there are photographers that come around and take your photos, and they do this throughout the entirety of the trip, and then post them on a wall where you could browse them and buy them. There were over 2,000 people on that boat, all who likely had their pictures on these walls, and Amy was no exception. However, the night before her disappearance, every single one of Amy's pictures had been removed, and to this day are unaccounted for, with the very photographer of the ship claiming they have no idea where they could have gone. Out of all the people on board, Amy was the only one with missing photographs. If the trafficking theory is to be believed, then it's highly likely that these pictures were taken in order to be used to sell her. It makes this moment, a moment where Amy seems so happy, that much darker, as many believe that the man she is dancing with had his hand in kidnapping and selling her. Whether it's true or not, what happened after these moments remains a mystery. But as it turns out, this would not be the last time that Amy would be captured on camera, with the final chapter of this story proving to be its most devastating yet. In 2005, the parents of Amy received an email containing a photograph of a lady lying on a bed in lingerie, a lady that looked a whole lot like Amy. To make matters worse, the person who sent the photo in claimed that they had seen it on an escort site, thus adding more fuel to the already terrifying theory that Amy was in fact a victim of human trafficking. A theory that all began on the night of March 23rd in a cruise ship's dance club. The thought of being kidnapped, taken against your will, forced into a fate where you have little to no control over. It's something that's always terrified me, and unlike Amy's case, there are many examples out there of kidnappings being caught on camera. The exact moment someone was taken, the exact moment before they disappear. Most notably, on November 12th, 2019, a doorbell camera captured what appears to have been the kidnapping of a girl in a residential neighborhood in LA. It's a case that has since gained national recognition, with Nexpo even including it in one of his disturbing things from around the internet videos. To this day, this clip remains unsolved, as authorities are still yet to determine who the girl screaming for help even was. But upon finding this clip, I fell down a rabbit hole of other kidnapping cases whose eerie final moments were captured on camera, and out of all the ones I watched, I found one that proved to be especially disturbing. Life was anything but easy for the then 8-year-old Relish Rudd. By the start of 2014, she was living in a bed-bug-infested homeless shelter with her mother, a place that was considered by most to be barely livable. Throughout their time at the shelter, her mother, Shamika Young, had befriended a man named Khalil Tatum. He would frequently bring Relisha gifts and had been one of the few bright spots in the family's very dim life. Tatum was a janitor at the homeless shelter, and he was known to be a very generous man, especially when it came to the children in the shelters. But as time went on, Tatum's seemingly kind-hearted ways led Shamika to make a tragic mistake. She began to trust him. The trust grew to the point where Shamika ended up allowing Tatum to take her daughter out to different events. On one occasion, he'd even taken the 8-year-old girl to see Disney on Ice. It had gotten to the point that, according to Shamika's sister, Relisha was starting to spend entire weekends with Tatum. The situation was strange, given that Tatum was 50 years old at the time. But at first, the arrangement seemed to be working out for Relisha. It's long since been reported that she hated staying at the homeless shelter, and that she had faced abuse and neglect from her own mother. And maybe Relisha would have been happy to just get out of the shelter for a few nights out of the week. But things were about to change. Eventually, one night, Shamika had trusted Tatum with taking Relisha to her grandmother's house to spend the night. Tatum agreed and left the shelter with the young girl. After that night, Tatum suddenly stopped showing up to the shelter, and there was no sign of 8-year-old Relisha. Her mother appeared unconcerned, however, assuming that Relisha was still at her grandmother's house. But as time went on, Relish's school started to take notice of her absence and began questioning where the little girl had gone. And with their own investigation, they realized that Relish had actually gone missing and that she wasn't actually at her grandmother's house. Relish had officially disappeared, and a suspect behind her disappearance wasn't hard to find. Security tape would soon be released that showed Relish and Tatum walking inside of a hotel days after Tatum had taken her. The tape shows Tatum opening the door to their room and the two stepping in. This would be the last moment that 8-year-old Relish Rudd would ever be seen again. No video has been released showing her leaving this room, and from the moment that door shut, her whereabouts are uncertain. The cops immediately went looking for Tatum and Relish and quickly discovered that Tatum had been staying at a nearby motel, a different hotel from the one that Relish had last been seen in. But as police opened the door, they found something unexpected. It wasn't Relish, or even Tatum for that matter, but it was Tatum's wife, Andrea, who was in the room with a gunshot wound to the head. She was already dead by the time her body was discovered. She had been murdered in cold blood. This changed the course of the investigation, because now they not only viewed Tatum as a kidnapper, but also as a murderer. Police obtained a warrant and soon were able to track him down to a small shed at a local park. Inside, they found Tatum, the one and possibly only person to know where Relish was, the man who had all the answers they were looking for. But there was one issue. Tatum was dead.
We begin tonight with new developments in the search for 8-year-old Relish Rudd.
Jamie Kelly, that body found tonight in the park has been identified tentatively, according to D.C. police, as Khalil Tatum.
In the shed, he laid next to the same gun that he had used to kill his wife, dead of an apparent suicide. It's a lot to handle and a lot to make sense of, but while viewing the timeline, here's what investigators think might have happened. After Tatum had taken Relish, he potentially began sexually exploiting her, possibly even pimping her out to others. This is something that the wife may have soon caught on to, and since Tatum couldn't have this information getting out, he killed her. After the murder, and out of guilt for all the atrocities he committed, Tatum then took his own life. It's a theory that makes sense, but it's forgetting one key detail. What happened to Relish? Well, it was also discovered that Tatum had purchased a shovel and heavy-duty trash bags days after taking Relish. It was also reported that he had spent a high amount of time at the park where he had allegedly killed himself. Putting this all together, many believe that he killed Relish and buried her somewhere within the park. However, her body has yet to turn up, and investigators still have hope that she may be alive somewhere out there, with some believing that she may have even been sold into trafficking. But there's only one man who truly knew for sure what happened to Relish, a man who is no longer alive, and when he died, he took with him the answers as to what ever became of her. Looking back on her final moments ever seen, it's impossible to find the words. Who would have known that this man would end up murdering someone and then killing himself, and this little girl would go missing, never to be seen to this day, with her two most likely fates being death or trafficking?